Did you know that ant colonies can be massive underground? I mean, you might have seen videos where hot metal was poured into ant nests and it showed how amazingly sophisticated ant colonies are. But when these scientists stumbled upon an ancient ant kingdom, they poured cement slurry for 3 days until 10 tons of cement disappeared down the tube. This network stretched 2 stories underground and housed 1 billion ants. After 10 days of cleaning, a marvelously crafted ant kingdom emerged, complete with roadways, hideways, storage homes, apartments, fungal gardens, and even recycling and garbage centers. How did that happen? Because think about it for a moment, right? Each individual ant seems to be making simple independent decisions about what it should be working on. One ant go and search for food, another one is stacking sand, and another one is caring for the young. Now those decisions aren't complicated in themselves. After all, like one ant can only do so many things. However, it isn't until you take a step back that you notice something even more interesting. The colony itself is alive. It has properties that can't be explained by the decisions of individual ants. It moves as a whole. It adapts to the outside world and has a life cycle almost as a living, breathing organism. Why is that? If an ant colony is full of individual ants making their own independent decisions, how is it organizing itself in such a predictable and coordinated system? Keep in mind that there is no government here. There is no Congress, no brains, and without any centralized power, an ant colony is able to create shit like this. Which is kind of incredible when you think, yeah, wow, cool, nigga, okay, shut up. Can you wrap up this whole fucking ant talk and explain how does it help you practically improve your life already? Yes, but right after we talk about this. What is a complex non-linear adaptive system? And how can it help you improve your life and stop getting scammed by this nigga, and this nigga, and this nigga? In 1870, wolves in Yellowstone National Park were hunted by park employees because predators are bad, right? They kill all various species of animals, and so the idea was that by removing the top predators, then the ecosystem as a whole should thrive. And by 1926, the last pack of wolves in Yellowstone had been killed. Now, fast forward to 1995. Deer everywhere, in every single fucking corner, destroying the vegetation, eating all the grass, and fucking everything up. And so the US government realized that this is a problem. And in order to control the deer populations, they must release more wolves back into the park. Since wolves are the natural predators of the deer, this should regulate and rebalance the ecosystem back to what it was before. So in 1995, 14 wolves were reintroduced back into Yellowstone. And as soon as they arrived, even though they were few in number, they started to have some of the craziest effects ever. First, they started to kill some of the deer, which is pretty obvious, but that wasn't the major thing. Much more significantly, the deer started avoiding certain parts of the park because they were dangerous, and that led to some areas instantly recovering and the height of the trees quintupled. Which is a fancy way of saying 5x, please guys, believe I'm smart. And as soon as that happened, the birds started moving in. The number of beavers started to increase because beavers enjoy to eat the trees. And the dams they started to build in the rivers provided habitat for many other species like ducks, fish, reptiles, and many others. The wolves killed coyotes, and as a result of that, the numbers of rabbits and mice began to rise, which meant more hawks, more weasels, more foxes, more badgers. Bears fed on the carrions that the wolves had left, and their population began to rise as well. But here's what's so fucking interesting. As trees regenerated along the riverbanks, their roots stabilized the soil, protecting against erosion, narrowing the channels. More pools have formed, and in some cases quite literally changing the physical paths of the rivers. In other words, the rivers bent in response to adding just 14 wolves into the ecosystem. This is a perfect example of a complex non-linear adaptive system. It's complex because it's made of so many different elements and systems all working together. It's non-linear because one small change can lead to unpredictable and massive or small results. And it's adaptive because the system changes its behavior over time. So what previously seemed as an evil species that kills animals turned out to be that they indirectly gave life to many others, and removing them or adding quitting them can cause massive unpredictable effects, such as the river's paths literally changing. But how does this relate to you quitting beating your fucking meat, or making money, or clapping that girl's cheeks? It's actually a dude. Well, guess what, my friend? You are a complex non-linear adaptive system yourself. If you can understand, but more importantly, leverage and take action on these principles from system theory, then you'll be able to direct your life, your body, your mind, however the fuck you want it, because now you understand the underlying rules of the game. And I know this works because this is exactly what I did to build a successful business, generate over 8.6 million impressions online, run an ultra marathon, and quit 2 decades worth of addiction, with many other achievements that I don't quite have the time to show in this video. I did all of these in just 1 year. I myself honestly sometimes find struggles to believe this sometimes, and I'm not saying this to show how much of a fucking genius I am, even though it's fucking true. I just want you to believe me when I say this. Please believe me when I say this. The greatest contributor to these results happening was my understanding and application of systems theory to my life. And if you apply it just like how I did, then you will get just as much results in life, if not more. And this is what's missing in the self-improvement space. It's this type of shit. It's principles that don't change, the rules of improvement itself. So in this guide, we're gonna start by looking at the 2 main behaviors of systems and identify which one do you fall under. Then we're gonna take a look at complexity and identify the macro system of improvement and the micro subsystem that works together to form the bigger whole. After that, we're gonna tackle the problem of non-linearity and unpredictability in chaotic systems such as yourself, and I will teach you the mathematical rules that if you follow, you will entirely eliminate luck and chance and unpredictability out of the equation so that you can guarantee your success. And we will also talk about entropy and adaptability. Here you will learn how systems die and how they live, and by applying these rules to your life, you will turn all that potential inside of you into real world, physical, tangible fucking results. Just before we begin, there are 5 annoying things that I just have to get them out of the way. I'm sorry, I just have to do it, alright? The first thing is that this video took me about 100 hours of focused, hard work over 2 weeks to produce, and all I'm gonna ask for in return is just 5 seconds of your time. Just like and sub, you know, it literally takes like 2 seconds. Second, you will be provided with all the templates, the diagrams, and everything you need in the description below. Third, if you want personal one-to-one support directly from me for free, then you can get a free call to start working together. It's completely for free, so just go ahead and get it if you want, right? And fourth, this is the second episode of applying systems theory to self-improvement. If you haven't watched the previous one, then you won't really understand a lot of the things that we're gonna talk in this video, okay? So make sure you watch both. And finally, fifth, I want to warn you of the resistance that you're going to face throughout this video. My goal here is to give you what you need to hear, not what you want to fucking hear, like a little baby, like a little bitch. All the other shit self-help influencers can help you with that. Guess what? What you need to hear is going to be boring and uncomfortable in the moment, but that's a sign of growth, right? So when you're feeling that urge to quit the video, when you're feeling like those emotions, just remember you're on the right track here, okay? And just push through them. So with that in mind, let's get to fucking work. Balance and reinforcement. When it comes to systems and improving your life, there are 2 major feedback loops that you can be in. And remember, we explained this in the previous video. A feedback loop is when the output affects the inputs or the processes, right? The 2 big loops that you can be in are reinforcing or balancing. Let's start with the reinforcement feedback loop. I bet that you're familiar with this graph if you've been on self-improvement for long enough. The exponential curve. This is everyone's favorite topic to talk about in this space. Everyone says how if you do the right things for long enough, then eventually at some point, just pray to God, you know, at some point you will experience compounding positive results. But no one mentions how do you exactly practically do that? How do you actually trigger and activate this and turn it into physical, tangible results? I'll show you how. A reinforcing feedback loop takes place when outputs from a system affects its input, which then changes the amount of something measurable inside the system called the stock. That change in the stock then affects the outputs again, creating a loop. This loop can be either positive or negative depending on what is being reinforced. If you don't understand what I've just said and you're kind of confused, stock, input, output, then I explain all of those in very simple details in the previous video. So, in a reinforcing feedback loop, change basically builds on itself. So if the stock increases, it tends to increase even more. And if the stock decreases, it tends to decrease even faster. Through yields, a stock grows more when there is already a lot of it. And through outflows, the stock shrinks more when there is already less of it. This kind of loop strengthens the direction the system is already moving in. So it can create healthy growth, which is a virtuous cycle, or rapid, fast collapse, which is a vicious cycle. For example, imagine a party system. The inflow in this case is people entering the party. The stock is how many people currently at the party. The outflow is people leaving the party, and the yield is people enjoying the party and actually staying. Now, this system can reinforce itself in both directions. Remember, if many people are enjoying the party, more people want to join because it looks fun. Now, that increases the number of people at the party, and as the party gets bigger, even more people enjoy it, which in return attracts even more people. And this positive reinforcing loop can quickly turn the party into a massive event. However, the opposite can also happen. Imagine one person decides to leave. The number of people at the party goes down. This can make others feel less excited because their friends are leaving, so they want to leave as well. And as more people leave the party becomes less fun, causing even more people to leave, and very quickly that same huge event can completely fall apart. Here's another example. Imagine a football player or like a team where confidence is the stock. And we have inflow being playing football, the yield is winning games, and the outflow is losing the games. A reinforcing feedback loop can happen in this system as well. When a player or a team wins a game, the stock of confidence increases. Higher confidence makes them play better and take more chances on the field, which increases their chances of winning again. And with each win, it adds more confidence, and that confidence leads to even more win. This is a positive reinforcing loop where success builds on success. Now, on the other hand, losing games reduces the stock of confidence. Lower confidence can lead to hesitation, mistakes, and poorer performance. This makes future losses more likely, which further lowers the confidence even more. And as the confidence drops, now performance keeps on getting worse, creating a negative, vicious, reinforcing loop. Now, in both cases, the change reinforces itself. Winning builds confidence and leads to more wins, while losing reduces confidence and leads to more losses. Now, let's apply these principles of a reinforcing feedback loops to self-improvement. Remember, we mentioned this in the previous video. In a self-improvement system, the stock is the results or consequences that you experience in your life. Inflow is taking action, outflow are the negative actions or failures, and yield is the positive action/success. So, when you take an action, you create results. Good actions tend to create good results, and bad actions tend to create bad results. Wow, magic. But it doesn't just stop there. Those results then influence what actions you take next, which create this reinforcement loop. If the inflow is taking action, and let's say that action is reading a book about discipline, right? The stock is the results you get from that action. So after reading the book, the result that you're going to experience is maybe gaining knowledge, gaining insight, ideas. The yield is positive action or success. So if you apply what you've learned from the book, you become more disciplined, right? Because you are more disciplined, now you are more likely to take more positive actions, like reading more books, practicing self-control, and working towards your goal. These positive actions increase future positive actions. They don't stop, which leads to better results, and this creates a positive reinforcing loop that compounds on itself. Now, on the other hand, if instead of applying those principles from the book, let's say you got bored, you closed the book and went on to watch porn, right? This negative action, which is the outflow, will influence the inflows, making you more likely to do more negative actions. And because your dopamine is now below baseline, which is a negative consequence due to the bad habit that you just committed, Now you will try to get it back up using another bad habit such as video games, for example, because that's the fastest way and easiest way to increase your dopamine back to the same levels. And before you know it, now you're stuck in a self-fulfilling negative reinforcement loop. The more bad habits you do, the more likely you are to do bad habits. So in essence, positive actions will lead to good results, and those good results will lead to even more positive actions. Negative actions will lead to bad results, and those bad results will lead to more negative actions. And if we plot the rise and fall of the stock on a graph, then it's going to look something like this. On the left side here, we have the level of the stock, which is good or bad results. On the bottom, we have time. Then we just look at what happened to the stock over time. The more good consequences you experience, the more good consequences you will experience, and it grows in an exponential fashion. The more bad consequences you experience, the more bad consequences you will experience, and again, it grows exponentially as well. Now, in the real world, the shape looks more like an S curve rather than a J curve. This is due to limited resources from the environment. Something cannot just grow infinitely. There are always physical constraints. So imagine the potty example that I gave you earlier, right? At some point, the potty will plateau. It can't just, you can't just have like people coming in and joining and growing exponentially infinitely. It has to plateau at some point. It's the same with your knowledge, the confidence, that team winning the game. At some point, they're gonna lose, right? Now, let's talk about the opposite loop. This is the more important loop, which no one in the self-improvement space ever mentions. If you ever feel stuck in your life, if you ever feel like you're in an upstream battle, then it's very likely that you are operating under a balanced feedback loop and you don't understand how it works. So what is a balanced feedback loop? It's when there is a mechanism in the system that stabilizes the stock level and bring it to a desired level, which we call a set point. When the stock level is out of alignment with the mechanism's goal, which is the set point, then the balancing feedback loop will kick into gear to bring the stock level back to an acceptable range. Here's an example. Imagine a coffee drinker, right? Where the stock is his energy levels or alertness, for example. When this person feels that his energy levels stock is low, then he may grab a cup of coffee to wake him up a little bit, This guy, in his mind, he holds a desired stock level, energy for work. This is his set point. And the purpose of his caffeine delivery system is to keep the stock level of alertness at his desired state. It is the gap, the discrepancy between the actual stock level and the desired stock level that drives the system to adjust the stock either up or down. And similar to the reinforcing loop, the balancing loop can work in both directions. In this case, the feedback loop can either correct an undersupply as well as an oversupply. So imagine if the guy starts drinking way too much coffee and finds himself bouncing all over the place with extra energy. What's going to happen is that he will stop the caffeine for a while to bring his energy levels down, because high energy also creates a gap. It creates a discrepancy which is in the opposite direction that says this is too much, we need to chill out. And this causes him to reduce his coffee intake until his energy level settles down. Here's another balancing feedback loop example. Let's say the stock we're measuring here is the coffee's temperature levels, all right? The system's goal is to bring the coffee temperature, which is the stock, to the same level as the room temperature, which is the set point. Here, you can see the behavior of a balancing feedback loop. Wherever the initial value of the stock, which is the coffee temperature in this case, whether it's above or below the goal, which is the room temperature, the set point, the feedback loop will get into work and brings it towards the set point. The change is faster at first because the gap between the stock and the set point is big. But then, as the level of stock gets closer and closer to the set point, then it starts slowing down bit by bit. Now, let's look at the balancing feedback loop for self-improvement, which actually explains why most people feel stuck, burnt out, or basically they keep snapping themselves back to the same level. Unlike reinforcing loops, balancing loops, they do not amplify change, they resist change. This insight will change your fucking life if you understand it, so pay close attention. The job of a reinforcing loop is to keep the system operating within a stable range. In a balancing feedback loop, the system compares where you are right now, which is the current stock level, versus where you can sustainably be, which is the set point. The difference between these two levels creates corrective pressure, and the bigger the gap, the stronger the correction will be, just like the coffee temperature example from earlier. If you recall once again, the stock here in self-improvement is the results or consequences that you experience. The inflow is taken action, the outflow are the negative actions / failure, and yield are the positive actions / success. If the inflow is taken action, imagine that action is pushing yourself harder. The stock is the results that you get from that action, right? It's the consequences. So after pushing yourself harder, what happens? The result is discipline. So here we have a stock of your discipline level, okay? The outflow is negative actions / failure, like we established. After pushing yourself harder, this can become either fatigue, stress, loss of motivation, burnout, or it can become yield. So the yield, like we said, is the positive action / successes, right? So after pushing yourself harder, you can become more capable, you can become stronger minded and increased willpower. Now, here is the kicker. Look what happened when this feedback loop of balancing is in play in your life. At first, you decide to yourself, yeah, I'm gonna get my shit together. I'm gonna wake up early. I'm gonna train hard. You journal, you meditate, you cut all the distractions. Your discipline stock rises rapidly because you're pushing yourself. Now, this feels like progress, right? And it is in a sense, but the system is now above its sustainable range, above the set point. The balancing loop here kicks in. And as your discipline stock rises too high, now fatigue accumulates. Sleep quality may drop a little bit because you're working on your business, you're staying up late, you're waking up early. Motivation starts to lag a little bit, and now emotional regulations weakens. Now these effects, they don't hit you immediately. There is a delay. But eventually, the gap between your current discipline, which is the stock level, and your sustainable capacity, which is the set point, gets too large. And at that point, the balancing feedback loops activate. You start skipping habits. You feel exhausted for no reason. Small tasks, they start feeling heavy, and you lose consistency. This reduces your discipline yield, pulling the stock back down towards its original point. Not because you're weak, but because the system is correcting itself. The key insights here that most people miss is that from the outside, this looks like I lost motivation. I failed. I wasn't disciplined enough. But from a systems thinker perspective, what actually happened is the balancing feedback loop did its job perfectly. The system's function wasn't optimized for maximum effort. It was optimized for survival and stability. This creates the self-improvement crash. If you aggressively raise the stock without raising the set point, the loop will always win. You will always lose no matter what. And I bet you've experienced this more than anyone else. You get this pattern where you push hard, the discipline spikes. Now there is a small delay because the cost accumulates over time. The correction kicks in, and now your discipline collapses and the stock returns to baseline or lower, which we're going to discuss in a little bit. Here's the insights I want to give you here. If reinforcing loops explain how people grow fast out of nowhere, then balancing loop explains why they remain stuck and they fall back to their old habits. So in essence, here's what we've covered in this section. A reinforcing loop pushes change in the same direction. So more usually leads to even more, and less usually leads to even less. A balancing loop pushes back against change. So too much will bring it down and too little will bring it up. Now here is the fucking magic. Look what happens when you plot these two graphs next to each other. Welcome to Oscillations Hell. This is what happens when a reinforcing feedback loop and a balancing feedback loop operate inside the same system at the same time. The balancing loop decides when you change directions, and the reinforcing loops decide how hard you move once that direction is set. And together, They trap you in such violent fucking swings. In this hell, you will experience the most intense, most extreme levels of pains you can ever imagine. I seriously wouldn't wish this on my worst enemies. Here's what's actually happening under the hood, right? When these two feedback loops exist within one system, they don't just cancel each other out, they take turns. So the reinforcing loop amplifies wherever direction you're already moving in, like we said, and the balancing loop acts like a trigger that flips the direction once you drift too far from your internal set point. You may grind hard for a week, 2 weeks, maybe a month. You're disciplined, you cleaned your room, you stacked your bank account, you have sharp thoughts, among levels of clarity. You feel unstoppable and on top of the world. That's when the reinforcing loop is working in the positive direction in your favor. So here, positive actions are resulting in positive results. And like we explained before, positive results will create even more positive actions. The momentum builds up, your confidence builds up, and everything compounds upwards, right? But the higher you go, the further you drift away from what your system believes is the set points, from what your system believes is normal. And then, boom. Now the balancing feedback loops fires, not to destroy you, but to correct the deviation from the set point. A weekend hits you, and now you celebrate that wins, right? You slack on that one habit, you skip that one workout, you spend money like a fucking idiot. Or you wake up one day and your mind starts feeling foggy for no fucking reason. That moment is not the fall, it's that trigger. Here, fatigue, stress, identity resistance, biological limits finally start registering the gap between where you are and where you're allowed to be. And now the direction flips. Once the drop begins, the reinforcing loop takes over again, but this time in the negative direction. One skipped habit turns into 3. One bad choice turns into a binge. Dopamine drops below baseline, so you chase it even more with more shortcuts. Avoidance feeds into avoidance. Guilt feeds into more guilt. Shame feeds into more shame. And the fall accelerates. You don't just return to the average or the baseline, you crash below it. Suddenly, the same guy who was ruthless and disciplined last week is now avoiding his goals, procrastinating, drowning in self-hate. The worst part is that it's the same fucking guy, yet at the same time it feels like completely two different humans. That's because the balancing loop flipped the direction and the reinforcing loop slammed the gas pedal. And it doesn't just stop there, because now, once you fall far below your internal range, the balancing loop fires again in the opposite direction. Now the pain becomes unbearable. You have so much shame, so much anxiety and disgust with yourself. That discomfort is not random. It's corrective pressure. It's the system saying, this is too low. We gotta get the fuck up here. This is not the set point that we're supposed to be at. And that's when the grind starts again. Now you swear to yourself, this time is different. You clean everything, you lock in, you go hard again, and once that upward motion starts, the reinforcing loop amplifies it. Discipline breeds discipline, progress breeds confidence, and momentum fucking explodes. And before you know it, you're not just back to normal, you've overshot the set point. And now you feel untouchable, invincible, and on top of the fucking world. And the cycle repeats itself. You've probably lived this cycle so many times to the point where it feels almost fucking scripted, and that's because it is. Not consciously, but internally, reinforcing and balancing feedback loops are running your psychology and biology on autopilot. And until you make the unconscious conscious, it will rule your life and you will call it fate. Your highs and lows, they're not accidents, they're not mood swings, they are predictable outputs of a reinforcing loop amplifying the corrections of a balancing loop with a fixed set point. Your brain is not trying to make you great or miserable, it's just trying to keep you stable, and whatever stable currently means for you. That's why you feel like two different people living in one body. That's why you build and destroy over and over and over and over again like clockwork. And the worst part is that almost no one knows how to fix the root cause of this issue, and most guys are trying to escape the lows by forcing the highs harder. More willpower surely will help me, more discipline, I need more motivation, I need stricter routine. They never realize the problem is not in the fucking reinforcing loop being too weak, it's that the set point of the balancing loop has never changed. And I was stuck in this inner war for 3 goddamn fucking years. And the second I understood how these loops actually interact, I was able to change my set point and finally pull myself out of this fucking hell of an oscillation and succeed in 11 different goals in 1 fucking year. And honestly, I can't stop winning since. Why? Well, now I'm stuck. But not in this shit. I'm stuck in a positive reinforcing feedback loop that will continue on growing on forever. How did I do that? Well, that's what the self-improvement system that I'm building will show you. It will teach you how to stop oscillations, how to stop going up and down like a fucking ping pong ball, and actually stabilize progress. So let me walk you through what this system is and how it works.
What is good in the hood? I'm so sorry, but I'm gonna have to end the video here. I know that this sounds like a fucking marketing, like keeping you until the end to give you like the good thing and then not giving it so that I can sell you my shit, but I swear that was not the point. Like, look, right, as you can see here, this video was supposed to be like 1 hour long, right? But I couldn't fucking finish it, for God's sake, and I did work hard. Like, I didn't even procrastinate or skipped any days of work, but it just takes so fucking long to make. Look at all of these cuts, right? All of these, everything you saw in this video so far is literally handmade. Like, all of the these diagrams, as you can see, look, all the shit. This is like me. I created these diagrams. I didn't download them from anywhere. I had to literally come up with ideas to be able to, like, explain all this fucking abstract shit, right? And it wasn't an easy task at all. All of them, literally, I had to make these diagrams over and over and over and over again and screenshot them all. Like, look at the fucking, look, all this shit, right? All of these fucking screenshots I took of like the things I edit, I cut, and literally hundreds of cuts and edits, right, went into this shit. It took so much time, and it took way longer than I thought. So I'm sorry, but we're gonna have to stop the video here, and don't worry, right, because in the next video we're gonna go over complexity, non-linearity, and all of that shit. I'm sorry I couldn't deliver my word here. We were supposed to cover like these things in this video, and they are in the next section here from 30 minutes until 1 hour. We're talking about complexity, adaptability, and non-linearity. I just couldn't fucking finish, bro. I'm dying right now, and the video must be out today. So I'm sorry about that, and I hope you understand. And yeah, see you in the next one.